Welcome to the Teaching Tax Flow podcast, where the goal is to empower and educate you to legally and ethically minimize taxes paid over your lifetime.
Thank you for joining us back on Teaching Tax Flow, the podcast. Today we got another fantastic episode where we're going to dive into research and development credits. You heard me right, R&D credits. But before we do that, let's just take a brief minute and hear from our sponsor.
This podcast is sponsored by Strategic Associates. If you are a high-income earner, real estate investor, or successful entrepreneur with $75,000 or more of annual tax liability, Strategic Associates can help. Your first step to saving thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, is to contact Roger Roundy at roger@strategicag.net or 801-641-2956, and be sure to tell him TTF sent you.
Welcome back to the Teaching Tax Flow podcast, episode 24. Once again, I'm going to say it, great topic. We actually have back with us the ladies from Engineered Tax Services. So we have Stacy Deru and Heidi Henderson. But before I hand it over to them, Chris, how are you doing, buddy?
Oh, John, thanks for thinking for me. I am great. I'm so excited. Back by popular demand, we have this brain trust with us today. And I'm really excited.
And we got so excited about it again, we forgot to introduce ourselves. So if you don't know, we're going to now we'll take the mic back a little bit. John Trapolsky from the Teaching Tax Flow team, as well as Chris Pecure, our brainchild behind Teaching Tax Flow. So enough about us. I'm sure you're tired of hearing about it. We do have our topic today, which is research and development credits. So let's talk. Let's hand it over to you, ladies. First off, again, thank you for joining us back. I know me and this guy next to me sometimes harass each other a little bit, so we'll be kind to each other. So how are you guys doing today?
Good. We're great. Happy to be back again, and the two of you are very entertaining. So keep it up.
Gosh. Well, we practice comedy, but we're not really good at it, so we're stuck here on a podcast. Before jumping into details, give us actually the definition or just define for us on a high level, what exactly is this so-called research and development credit?
So the research and development credit, at its core, it's actually a wage-based credit. And the idea behind it is to encourage, U.S.-based companies to hire domestically and to be innovative on an ongoing basis so that we continue to be competitive with the world stage on a broader sense. And really that's the simplest way to look at it.
They work. And so R&D to me, and again, I'm not in this space every single day like you guys are. So anytime I hear R&D, I think of either engineering, which ironically, tax engineered services. So engineering or like in a med lab somewhere. So as far as for those types of industries, what are we confined to?
So we're really not confined to anything, actually. There's a 4-part test that you're looking at when you want to find out if something is going to qualify for R&D. Is it a permitted purpose? So has something new been created? Has there been, once again, that word of innovation? And you can be innovative with anything, really. It doesn't have to be technology, pharmaceuticals, the obvious low-hanging fruit industries. And then they have to go into it not knowing for sure what's going to happen. So there has to be some sense of risk taking going into this, so that the costs that they are incurring, they could come out on the other end and it not turn out well. Even if they're relatively, sure of themselves, we've done things like this before and we're going to take it on, there still has to be some risk. And that's where you're coming into that idea too of multiple iterations. So you have to have some attempts and some failures going into this. It can't just be, you walk out, you plug something into the machinery out on your floor, it pops out, it's perfect, and you're all set. There really needs to be some additional attempts. And then you are looking at it as hard science though too. So something that's technological or scientific in nature. But once again, that can be, that could apply to any industry, especially, when you look at our lives these days, everything, you could have R&D on a farm.
Mm-hmm. Which that That's actually a great example because I know that's actually an industry that I'm surrounded with by our primary residents that really takes place. And those that are innovative in that space, some of them do very well. Some of them kind of get on the verge of giving away the farm, pun intended. But it's so like a bad example, which would absolutely not qualify one bit for this credit would be, hey, I'm a marketing agency and I want a credit because I decided to start drinking coffee backwards on one leg on Tuesdays. And now I want a credit for this because it impacted the way that my mornings go. Like completely ridiculous stuff. I'm sure people try to skirt through.
Well, yeah, hey, we came up with, the best way to have the most efficient meetings, or,
right.
we drawing a cartoon and then screen printing that on a t-shirt. Those sort of things are not going to qualify. But some areas, I'll give you a real world example that I think it's the first time it really kind of opened my eyes to the different scenarios that it could apply to. I had a client and they were a high-end cabinet maker, and they had developed a software to use with their ordering system because, once again, high-end cabinet maker delivering to custom homes all around the world, and they had their ordering SKUs it was ridiculous. It was, it was bigger than what the Yellow Pages used to be when you get that and, flatten things out with it. And so they created this technology to streamline that so that people could order online. So our initial thought was, hey, this is where the R&D credit is, right? It's a software. And so took the R&D, expert in there. We're sitting down, and yes, granted, there was definitely hours of work and time that had gone into creating this. It was going to qualify for R&D, nothing huge, but it was going to qualify. Well, as we're leaving, these cabinet maker, woodworking geeky guys, right, that are so excited about their new line of samples, stop to show them to us. And they just have board after board of all their new samples with all the different finishes, with all the different colors. And you could see the R&D expert, his little gerbil starting to run in his head, and he's getting excited because he's asking, well, how many times did it take you to get this finished? Oh, I used this tool, and then I had to go back and, start over with this. And then I had to get sand involved. And then and he's going through all of these different areas of trial and error. And the R&D specialist said, this is where all your R&D is. It's on these boards right here. It's all your samples for your new line.
It's interesting when you start to peel back on the onion, right?
Well, I would say we have a client in our private CPA practice that's a marketing agency that has developed something proprietary that they get an R&D credit every year. And the one thing is that I'm really excited to continue to work with Engineer Tax Services is that you mentioned it, John, but they marry the science of engineering and principles of tax and accounting together. So it could be a beautiful marriage. And even though accountants, CPAs, and engineers usually don't get along very well. So couple of questions, Stacy, on my end that a lot of people might not, eligibility, we understand those tests, but when you say wage-based credit, does someone have to be earning W-2 wages to qualify for that expenditure, or can they be a subcontractor?
You can have subcontractors as well. Obviously they want people to be W-2, so that is where the credit is going to have the most impact. But yes, any contractors, as long as they're domestically based. So if you're hiring contractors in the Philippines or Costa Rica or, all the places that come up, that's not going to count.
Exactly. And that's something that a lot of time, app developers and that sort of stuff run into that where the labor is overseas. And, but it's really, we talk about one of the 3 laws of teaching tax flow is that tax agencies are your involuntary business partner. They're encouraging and discouraging behavior. They are encouraging, this credit encourages domestic companies to use domestic labor to be creative and evolve.
So here's a question that complicated for both of you. So I just thought of this one, and this happens a lot in my world and has, right? So say you're working on a project, regardless what the project is, you hire we'll just call it a development company, and that company is US based, but they contract out all of their work offshore. So does that complicate things, or does that completely throw everything out of the water? Like, how far do you drill down as far as for who those employees are?
I know I have had this come up once. I'm going to tap Heidi in on that one because I've only had that come up one other time, and I know it did throw a wrinkle into it.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. We can still qualify that if the entity is U.S. based, they're paying taxes in the U.S. We're treating them just simply as a contractor. So direct employees or direct individuals paid as 1099s. If it's a company, we're looking for the company being based in the U.S. But the other interesting thing is, even for individuals who are working in the U.S., if they do work offshore and they're doing projects offshore and they travel, say, to Europe for certain projects, we actually have to exclude all of that time. Even though they're usually based in the U.S., we're actually extrapolating that as well.
That's where for a lot of these companies, time tracking and location is so important. And it's, as a CPA, when we work on a tax return, the tax return itself we don't have to identify where someone worked. I mean, there's some nexus issues with states and local, not to get the weeds there, but that's why you need to work with a company like Engineer, just because it's beyond the scope of a practicing CPA, even if they're in a specific industry niche. I really think that you should be working with someone specifically on that credit. And I think a big misconception, maybe Stacy, you could touch on this as far as the ideal business owner. The tax credit's not just for Amazon, and I know we've had the Secure 2.0 Act kind of chip away at them, and that'll be another podcast one day, and we'll keep our opinions to ourselves over here right for now. But anyway, what type of business owner? This credit's not just for the Amazons, the Googles. It's for a lot of Main Street USA business owners, I believe.
It is. It definitely is. So, I mean, businesses of any size and even startups. So there are opportunities for startups, even though they don't have revenue. So, the immediate idea would be, well, there's nothing to apply a credit to, but they can put that back toward payroll taxes. And so the IRA actually has increased that as well.
Mm-hmm. And
if you have 3 employees and they're all engineers, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Stacy cut out for a quick second, but I think that one of the things that we're talking about is eligibility. And, this isn't just for big companies. This isn't just for employees. We'd like to see the person being employed, but it's U.S.-based labor. And it also, it's something that not only a business, but a person can obtain. That credit, I'm going to ask Heidi this, because we talked about this on the previous podcast, talking about statute of limitations. You might run into a taxpayer that says, golly, I've been doing these activities in 2020, COVID hit, I started working at home. Maybe I started brewing my own beer and it just blew up or something, right? Could someone go back to 2020 and 2021 and grab those credits?
Yeah, Chris, exactly. It's bound same by the statute of limitations, where we can go back 3 years to activity that they did. We see this a lot with taxpayers who, just to your example, they do some startup. They have some brainchild light bulb idea, and they kind of start working on it. And the last thing that they thought about was an R&D credit. They didn't even know if the idea would work. It was pre-market. It was pre-manufacturer, whatever. So they have no idea. So yes, we can look back 3 years to still retroactively be able to capture that. One thing I'll tell you is a lot of times in these startups, these people, they don't pay themselves. So that's one thing is we'll usually say is sometimes educating someone in a startup company can be helpful in saying, look, even if you're putting guaranteed payments in there that you're not paying yourself yet, maybe you're accruing payables. The money isn't there for them to pay you, but eventually someday it will be able to pay you that stuff that's just sort of accruing. Those will actually be reflecting in the entity to be able to accrue some of the applicable credits, because that's the one caveat is that some of these startup companies, they do everything they can to not spend any money because they don't have any money. But the R&D credit is a percentage of their costs. So we always kind of weigh that.
That is a great point. And when you start diving in for many of our clients, and the R&D credit is really part of their budget, part of their expectation and their tax planning. And for some clients, we've actually done some research and pivoted on entity selection, because I know there's a profitability component as well. So it's
Well, and Chris, to that point, since you bring that up really quick, that's one thing is, yes, there are instances where being a C Corp is helpful, but when it comes to things like incentives or depreciation or tax credits like the R&D, it can be difficult because those credits won't come out of a C Corp. They get stuck there at the corporate level. Most companies don't pay tax at the corporate level. They're going to push everything out to distributions. So if you're in an LLC or a partnership or a S Corp, those then push down to the owners personally. So if you get a $5,000 tax credit, that's going to come down from your company to the owner, and that owner is essentially going to get a $5,000 check against what he would have owed on his personal tax return. So yes, entity selection is always a great thing to consider.
It is, and those credits will, not to get too technical, but they're going to flow through on a K-1 form. But I would say is if you are a business owner and you are creating something and you think you might even potentially qualify for the R&D, get Engineered Tax Services involved as early as possible. You might talk to them. They might say, you know what, you're on the right path at this point. The credit's not there for you, or the cost benefit's not there. But don't be the person that's, I've seen it where, I could have qualified for the last 6 years. Good news, I can go back 3 years and amend returns, but I left money on the table. So, Stacy, anything to add as far as something we should be looking out for, and before we ask you how the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I agree with you on that point of, not making assumptions. But I would throw out something else that, can be overlooked. I mean, it's a federal tax credit, but a lot of states have some very lucrative R&D credits as well. Tennessee, where I am located, does not happen to be one of them, unfortunately. But Utah, you mentioned Roger at the beginning of the podcast. In Utah, you're basically doubling your tax credit on the R&D. So, it's kind of a location thing on those sort of items, and you really want to make sure that you're taking full advantage of all of those opportunities.
Well, I appreciate it. Stacy, you're going to go on the hot seat this time, though, for special guest rapid fire questions, and then we're going to make sure that we get everyone the best way to get a hold of you. All right, are you ready for some fun?
Sure.
All right. What's your favorite type of vehicle?
Favorite type of vehicle? Anything that goes fast.
All right. And what color?
Like gunmetal gray.
I like it. Your favorite vacation spot?
Italy.
Ooh. All right. Favorite cereal?
Oatmeal.
We have the healthiest guests ever. So, these ladies are very impressive. All right, that's cool. I wish I didn't like Golden Grams. All right. Favorite store to shop at?
Whimsy in Park City.
Oh. And final question, ideal weekend.
Ideal weekend would be probably hanging out with my family, either if it's, a 3-day, if there's a possibility to take a trip somewhere, do some exploring. Everyone in my family enjoys food a lot, right down to my 9-year-old who asks me to bring escargot home for him.
Oh.
So we like to go out and kind of do the, the food hopping in locations. So stop in and get an appetizer, stop in somewhere else and get something to eat, and just kind of make our way through eating a new town.
That's fun. Yeah, my wife and I if we don't have the kids with us, we went to Savannah about a year and a half ago, and we didn't eat a meal, but we ate appetizers. We would just bounce around at different places, walking and getting an appetizer at different places. So, finally, best way to get a hold of you so we can make sure that Teaching Tax Flow community, hopefully they're going to see you in the Defeating Taxes private Facebook group, obviously, but best way to get a hold of you.
It's so there's email. It's sderu, DERU @engineeredtaxservices.com. If anybody wants to connect to me on LinkedIn, they're more than welcome to. Stacy Deru. I'm kind of like Tigger. I'm the only one out there, so it's easy to find me. It's not a common name. And they're also welcome. Anybody's welcome to give me a call as well. It's 801-558-4906.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, thank you, ladies, for joining us again back. I mean, obviously, we couldn't have been too wild for you because you literally came back and dealt with us again. But again, we really appreciate your time, your insight into this as well. I mean, this is something that, again, a lot of people may not know what it is. If they do, they may, I wouldn't say have incorrect information, but they may not have all of the information. So it's a fantastic topic. I'm glad we dove into it. Again, if anybody has any specific questions on this, please feel free to reach out to them. Or drop it into the Defeating Taxes Facebook page. Feel free. So we always welcome those questions, comments.
And we'll have everyone's contact information. One more time, thanks again for Strategic Associates. And everyone have an awesome rest of the day. Oh, rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars. Tell everyone how much they love John Trapolsky.
I love it. Now you're giving me a big head. You may have the bald head, but I'm getting the big one now. But thank you, everybody, for joining in once again. Thank you, ladies, as always.
Yeah.
And we will see everybody next week.
Take care.
Hey, everybody. John Trapolsky here, obviously co-host of this podcast, as well as the Vice President of Marketing at Teaching Tax Flow. Just wanted to take a quick second and thank you for joining us here on this show. We love doing it. A couple things I wanted to drop at the end of this episode for you. First off, a huge thanks. We've done this for almost 6 months. That's half a year. It's half the distance between one tax day and another, to put it in perspective. Episode 24, we've been rocking these out for a while. A couple things you can do to help us out. So wherever you listen to this podcast, please go on there and leave a review, leave a rating. I know on some of them you can't actually leave a descriptive rating, but you can leave 5 stars, and only 5 stars, wink, wink. But we'd also love to hear from you if you have any guests, any friends, any colleagues that might be a great guest on the show. We'd love to hear it. Also, if you have any content ideas, any topics you'd love to hear us discuss, shoot them on over. hello@teachingtaxflow.com. Also, feel free to hop on to defeatingtaxes.com. That'll send you directly to our private Facebook group. I know we always mention it. We've actually grown that group from 0 just a couple months ago, and people are flowing in every day. So hop on there, start a new conversation, ask those questions, chime in on a conversation that's already taking place. Maybe you know the answer to of a question somebody else has asked, but really lift up all the other members. So we're in this together. It's a team effort as we take on the tax man. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This means a lot to us. Obviously, we absolutely love doing these shows, and you're a big part of it. So thank you from everybody here at the Teaching Tax Flow team, and we will see you soon.